And we're live from the living room as Doug eyes up the matchday spread. He's reaching for the Buffalo wing. Perfect! Hang on, what's this? Oh, he's gone for a can of Pepsi too! Incredible! What a finish! Sensational combination! Look at the delight on his face. There's no doubt about it. It just tastes better. Match days deserve Pepsi. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a pack of Pepsi Zero Sugar for today's match. It's poetry in motion.
This summer, serve up the cookout classics, Kraft mayo and dressing. Toss green salads with delicious ranch dressing or zesty Italian. Serve smooth, craveably creamy potato salads with mayo. We all know it's not a cookout without Kraft.
You're listening to Sportly, an Immigrantly media production.
Off the mark, Anunoby the rebound. It's over. It's over. Knicks fans, this is not a dream. Your long, long wait has ended. Go ahead and cry after 53 years.
Hey everyone, it's Kavitha Davidson. Welcome back to Sportly. As I said last week to my producer Paroma, if the Knicks won the championship, which are the craziest words to ever come out of my mouth, we would have to throw out our entire production schedule. So we have done that. So I'm here to catch up Paroma on the last week, the last 2 months of the NBA playoffs, of the Knicks doing this historic thing, of the greatest sports moment I have ever been a part of. So what's up, Paroma? I can't stop smiling.
What's up? How are you feeling?
I'm fucking exhausted. if I'm being real. Obviously, intellectually, I knew that the NBA playoffs run a full 2 months, but I've never had to experience this as a fan for the whole time. So yeah, April 18th, they started, and we won this past Saturday, which was the 13th, I believe. We should say we're recording this on a Wednesday before the championship parade tomorrow on Thursday. So yeah, it's been 2 months nonstop. I've been very lucky to be able to go to some of the games, which we should talk about. I've never experienced anything like this, but I'm also just tired. I'm so tired. The emotions, the drinking, the going out, like everything about it. It's a good tired, and we're running on adrenaline and fumes right now.
Yeah, you have been on so many flights in the last few days.
Yeah, that didn't really have anything to do with the Knicks. We won on Saturday. I was so lucky to be part of the broadcast coverage of that for New York Post Sports. We did a live stream watch party at a bar downtown, and we did analysis in color during the entire game, which means that I forever have my reaction to the Knicks winning the chip on video, which is nice.
Don't let him take that shot.
The quick three.
But then celebrated with my friends that night, and then I had a 9 a.m. flight to LA for another work thing. So I didn't sleep, and I just went straight to the airport after celebration, which was probably like 7 a.m. Got to LA, just crashed. I fell asleep at the pool at my hotel. Filmed all day Monday, 8 hours of filming. I don't know how I thought I was going to do a red eye. I had them schedule me on a red eye back Monday night to land Thursday morning in case there was a game 6 or a parade. And I don't know how I thought my 37-year-old ass was going to do that, because thankfully I was able to change the flight and fly back Tuesday daytime. But Monday night I got back to the hotel from filming, and I just crashed again. So, again, parade is tomorrow. And we'll sleep after that for about another 2 months.
I think you would have managed. You would have found the strength somehow.
Well, I said this to my friend, who, shout out to Percy, who was actually a Spurs fan. I said, I guess it's like when a mom has to lift a car to save her baby. And Percy, the Spurs fan, goes, don't diminish this. Lots of babies have been born in the last 53 years.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
That is the perspective we need.
You've been trying to make me understand how important this is. Like, for a month now, you've been like, there's a chance, they might win. It's been this complete drought for 50 years. So what happened this time? What changed?
A lot of things changed. For one, the owner of the Knicks, James Dolan, who has long been considered one of, if not the worst owners in sports, and I don't think that this championship changes that, quite frankly, he got out of the way. He took over this team in 2000, and has long been the reason that the Knicks have suffered from this level of futility. He's interfered with front office management. He's dictated trades. He has dictated draft picks. He's always thought of himself as a basketball person. He's certainly a fan, but he's not a basketball mind. So, what happened in the years leading up to this run is he kind of stepped away from day-to-day operations. He hired a GM named Leon Rose, who used to be at CAA, Creative Artists Agency. He was a player agent, which was itself a radical move. And then Leon brought in a guy named known as Worldwide West to help with basketball operations as well. This has actually been reported. James Dolan also owns a number of high-level entertainment venues throughout the country, including the Sphere in Vegas, which is now very famous and opened a couple years ago. And a lot of people say that he was so distracted by the Sphere that he didn't interfere in Knicks operations. And we are seeing the benefits of that now. But also this was just, this was years of a plan that Leon Rose put together. He went out and got Jalen Brunson, an undersized, if you talk to most people, an undersized point guard who was with the Dallas Mavericks at the time. He built this team. He made some controversial trades. He traded Dante DiVincenzo to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Karl Anthony Towns. That was also part of a way to dump Julius Randle's contract. Julius had been with the team when it started to show signs of being a playoff team back in 2020, 2021. But that trade is what brought Karl Anthony Towns to New York, and we can't imagine this team without him. He also made the decision in this past offseason to replace Coach Tom Thibodeau with Coach Mike Brown, which Thibodeau was as much a part of this playoff run, even though he wasn't here, as anybody who is on the current roster. And Mike Brown was a coach who had just been let go by the Sacramento Kings of all teams, you want to talk about futility of all teams. And then the Knicks bring him in and he's a winner. He had one before as an assistant coach. He was an assistant with the Spurs back in 99. He was when they won, they actually beat the Knicks on that year. He was an assistant with the Warriors when they were going through their championship teams, but this is the first one for him as a head coach. And he absolutely deserves it. And this has got to feel like a lot of great vindication for him. But as far as how we actually won from a basketball perspective, there's so much chemistry on this team. And I know that can often sound like a platitude and that it's overstated. And there is absolutely a lot of skill, obviously, as well. And we can talk about that. This is kind of known as the power of friendship team. And it is. You've got Jalen Brunson, you've got Josh Hart, you've got Mikal Bridges, all of whom played together in college in Villanova. They are lifelong friends. That's one of the reasons that letting go of Dante DiVincenzo was painful, because he was on those teams as well. Jalen and Mikal have won 2 NCAA championships together. This is a team that knows how to play together because they've been doing it since they were teenagers. The instincts that they have for where people are going to be on the court is something that you don't see often, even with teams that have practiced and played together for years professionally. So that's a big part of it. And then there's just been so much trust. These players have so much trust in each other. They have trust that if you're down 10, if you're down 20, which the Knicks were for most of these finals, but if they're down, then they can still find a way to come from behind. So there's just a lot of selflessness also. There's a lot of Jalen Brunson doesn't have to play a lot of isolation ball. He doesn't have to take things upon himself until he does, right? Because he's got players around him that he can rely on. You've got a player like Josh Hart, who isn't a big scorer, but the things that he does off the ball that might not show up on the stat sheet, or the things that, he crashes the boards and he gets those rebounds, and he is not a particularly tall player, not like the 2 big men that the Knicks have, but he is a menace with a loose ball. And it's the things that he does like that. And he has said this in interviews that, he had to learn early on that he wasn't going to be the scoring force, and that's not the role that he plays on a team, but it was more important, that he can contribute to the team in some way. And he absolutely does. And in those ways that often go unheralded. And then it's just a player like OG Anunoby just having great basketball instincts and the play that will live forever in not just New York sports legend, but NBA legend, sports writ large legend, was the tip in Game 4 when the Knicks completed the largest comeback in NBA Finals history. he makes that inbound pass to Jalen Brunson. Jalen tries to shoot a three, and you can see OG immediately sprints from the sideline to the basket in case Jalen misses that shot, and he does, but he's there. He's there to tip it in. And that's just fantastic basketball instinct. And I likened it to the Derek Jeter flip play in the 2001 ALDS against the Oakland A's, where Derek Jeter's playing shortstop. There's a single hit to right field. There's a runner rounding third to score, and Derek Jeter is nowhere near shortstop. He is near home plate. He cuts off the errant relay throw, manages to flip it to Jorge Posada, who's the catcher at the plate, who tags the runner out. And it's this legendary play. And that's, again, one that's all instinct, and knowing where the ball is.
It's gone with 1.2 remaining. Knicks take the lead.
So that OG Anunoby play will live forever. And, people have talked about how much this team represents the American dream. And it does in a lot of ways. You've got Kat, who's, of Dominican origin. You've got Jose Alvarado, who we should talk about, who is just a Puerto Rican kid from Brooklyn, from the projects. Like, whenever we talk about a homegrown kid coming to one of our teams, we're usually talking about someone from Jersey or from the tri-state area. This is a kid from the boroughs who grew up in the streets, who was traded late in the season from the New Orleans Pelicans from obscurity to come and win a championship with his team. But OG Anunoby, I also think, is very much the American dream, because you're talking about a guy of Nigerian descent who grew up in London, in England, who has won a championship with Toronto and has now won, the biggest championship probably in NBA history to date. So there's a lot to like about this team. And you can tell that I can just talk for hours about it.
Yeah, that is a special kind of pride. I get that.
Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
You were telling me there's a connection between you and what Carl Anthony did, how this felt personal to you.
Yeah, Karl Anthony Towns lost his mother in 2020, and he was with Minnesota at the time. This was during COVID. And Kat has always been known as kind of a soft-spoken, sensitive, vulnerable person in the best ways. In the hyper-masculine world of sports, he sometimes gets a lot of flack about it. They call him soft. But he has talked about in the years since how every game that he plays is for his mom. And throughout this finals run, throughout this playoff run, he has also talked about that. He is, you can see after game 4, he looks up to her and he says something like, "Thank you, Mama." After they won on Saturday, he said it at the trophy ceremony. He said, "Thank you for winning me, for getting me one, Mama." And he's, prayed to her every game. And, I lost my mother last year. My mother was a Knicks fan before I was born. She fell in love with this team when my parents came to this country in 1981. She fell in love with Bernard King. My dad is not a sports fan outside of maybe tennis and cricket. And he never really understood this love that my mom and I have for basketball and then baseball. But my mom being a Knicks fan is the reason I'm a Knicks fan, is the reason I'm a sports fan, is the reason I'm a sports writer. And I wish she had been here to see this. Yeah, so I was lucky to do, as I said, the broadcast for New York Post Sports. And they captured me during a commercial break in the last 30 seconds. I'm like bowing my head, and I'm definitely praying to my mother. So, and I'm not a religious person at all. She was, I'm not. Mm-hmm. But that's there. And, I said to my best friend, Tristan, who I've known since high school, who was very close with my mother, I said, I wish she had been here, but she was definitely celebrating. This was for the Game 4 comeback. She was definitely celebrating with us. And Tristan said to me, she was definitely watching from the rafters with the Angels. And that's probably also the only way to have afforded a ticket to Madison Square Garden. So she's not wrong.
Yeah, the tickets were pricey this time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Knicks tickets are always more expensive than other tickets. Everything in New York is more expensive than it is everywhere else in the country. That's true of everything. The tickets, I mean, listen, we can talk about this with World Cup tickets also, but it's a combination of the fact that we hadn't been there in forever, that we are the most passionate fan base. I think we've proven that over the last 2 months. We are just the most passionate fan base that exists in the league. And also the fact that we have a lot of billionaires in New York. There are a lot of very wealthy people in New York. And the bots, the resale bots that come and scoop up tickets and then put them on the secondary market for crazy prices. So all of those things kind of came together to create this atmosphere where, especially for the finals, I think for game 3, which is the first home game at Madison Square Garden, tickets on the secondary market were starting at $7,500. And that was before the playoffs started. And then I think after the Knicks won the first 2 games on the road, when it seemed like the Knicks could either clinch and sweep at home or at least, go up 3-0, 3-1, tickets went up even more. Tickets for games 3 and 4, I think, were something like $10,000 on the open market, which is crazy. Now, ticket prices started to drop day of. It's insane. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And I ended up going to San Antonio for game 2, which we should talk about because that was not a planned trip. But ticket prices started to drop day of for game 3 because Trump was there, which I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about that. We booed him as much as we expected.
Oh, I saw.
We expected, but nobody wanted to deal with him being there. Nobody wanted to deal with the extra security measures. They created this like barricade for the blocks around Madison Square Garden, and fans had to go line up hours before tip. It was a huge hassle. They had to cancel the watch parties. So tickets started dropping day of. And by dropping, I mean they were $3,500, which is cheaper for sure.
That's one impact of your president turning up.
That is one impact. But yeah, I mean, listen, for some of us, this was a once in a lifetime thing. So I ended up going to game 2 in San Antonio. Again, that was not a planned trip. After the Knicks won game 1 that Wednesday, I had already had a trip planned to Austin, Texas that Friday. So I got on a plane early that Friday morning. I think it was a 7 a.m. flight. And at first, I was just feeling the vibes. Like everyone was in Knicks gear. We're proud New Yorkers. There's a lot of Austin is a major tech hub. Lots of reasons that New Yorkers would be going to Austin on a Friday. And then I soon realized almost everyone on that plane was going to San Antonio for the game. I was going to Austin on a trip that had been planned for months for my friend Meredith's bachelorette weekend.
Yeah, you told me about it.
So I ended up talking to the 2 guys next to me. And I have no idea, Texas is a giant state. So I had been to Austin several times, but I'd never been to San Antonio. And they were going to the game. And I was like, well, how are you getting there? And they said they were renting a car and driving. And I was like, well, how far is that drive? And they said it's an hour 15, maybe an hour and a half. And I had no idea San Antonio was that close. So while I'm on the plane, I start looking at ticket prices for the actual tickets to Frost Bank Center. And everything I'm about to say, everything I'm going to say on this podcast when it comes to the cost of things is very obnoxious and privileged. I do not have a lot of money, but again, it is all relative to how much things cost in New York. Tickets to these finals games were $750. I think we paid $1,500 total, including fees for our pair of tickets. Again, I went to game 1 of the first round at Madison Square Garden. I went to game 1 of the semifinals at Madison Square Garden. I went to game 1 of the conference finals at Madison Square Garden. That game against the Cavs was a huge comeback. At the time, it was the biggest comeback in Knicks playoff history until game 4 of the finals. And the tickets to that conference finals game were about $650. So $650, again, everything is skewed in Madison Square Garden, but $650 for a conference finals game versus $750 for a finals game, which I have never even had the opportunity to see on TV, let alone in person. So then it was the question of how do I get to San Antonio? And also, am I a shitty friend for taking a little side quest during one of my best friends during her bachelorette weekend to go watch this Knicks game? On the latter point, I consulted with a bunch of my friends. I consulted with a lot of people who know Meredith. Meredith is a huge sports fan herself. She's the biggest Philadelphia Eagles fan I know. But so then after consulting a bunch of friends, there were actually 2 women on my flight who were also going to this bachelorette and asking them, everyone was like, Meredith would want you to go to this game. And then when we landed and I met up with her and I took her aside and I was like, listen, you whatever you tell me, I will do because this is your weekend. And what she told me was, I will not remember that you missed the first dinner of my bachelorette weekend. You are going to remember going to this game for the rest of your life. And that is a good friend. That is a good friend.
That's a fantastic friend.
And that is the right perspective, I also think, but not every woman feels that way about the things surrounding her wedding. So then it was the logistical thing as a New Yorker who can't drive, how I would get to San Antonio. And so then I had to look at Uber prices. The Uber from Austin to San Antonio, it's about 78 miles, was $120. It cost me, I think, $125 to go to the airport that morning. So at that point, I was like, I can't, it's a wrap. Like, I have to do this. So I went with my friend Sarah. We took a little side quest, as I said, to San Antonio. Everyone at the arena, including Spurs fans, everyone working there was so nice to us. The vibes were incredible. There were so many Knicks fans. I can't say enough nice things about San Antonio and the fans that I encountered, and the food options at Frost Bank, which I'm just going to say were better than the food options we have at Madison Square Garden. And one of the reasons is because San Antonio is a relatively working class, mostly Mexican city. And the arena does this really lovely thing that a lot of places in New York can't do because they have too many corporate contracts. But San Antonio's arena, they do rotating local vendors every game. So they have, their standing vendors with standard fare. And then they've got 3 or 4 different vendors throughout the arena that change every game based on, so there's like an elote cup and like really, like lovely things there. So had a fantastic time. And we were back in time for 1 a.m. drinks. We didn't even miss the whole night. We literally took a side quest to go watch the Knicks in another comeback win game 2. So yeah, that was just a once in a lifetime. Can't even put into words what it was like to see that. I'm very lucky that I was able to do that I happened to be in Texas, that I happened to already have a hotel. At that point, when everything kind of lined up, it felt like we were supposed to, like this was meant to be.
Yeah, this is a bachelorette weekend that you're not going to forget.
Are all batteries the same? That's like asking if all soccer players are the same. Take Messi, the most decorated player ever. Is there any other player who has achieved that? No, just him. Now take Duracell. Is there any other battery with power boost ingredients inside? No, just Duracell. Remember, goats only trust goats because they're built different. And Messi only trusts Duracell.
So, you called Game 5 for New York Post Sports. What was that like?
It was incredible. I was nervous the whole time. I've done a few of these live stream watch parties with New York Post Sports with my friends and colleagues, Brian Fonseca and Dexter Henry. So they brought me on for Game 4 of the conference final series against the Cavs. They brought me on last year for the final game against the Pistons, I believe, in the first round. And we won both the games that I called, and both were series clinching games. So they've started calling me Kavitha the Closer, the Mariana Rivera of these live streams, which is a lot of pressure. So they were like, we had to bring you in to hopefully close out these finals. And I said, this is a lot of pressure. It was an incredible experience. We had it at a bar downtown. A bunch of my friends and people that I love were there. On the one hand, I wish I'd been able to watch the game with them. But on the other hand, they were there. I got to hug them afterwards. And I have my reactions to this game
you look
forever.
Stunned.
I still haven't really been able to compute what I saw. But, there was a moment, and Brian, shout out to Brian, who has just been so unbothered during these playoffs. And he felt a way that, on the one hand, Knicks fans, we're a nervous bunch. We have seen a team not be here for a really long time, but we've also seen a team blow series leads before. So most of us wanted us to get this done in Game 5. Some people wanted it to go back to the Garden to celebrate on home court. I think most of us didn't want to push our luck. Just no, get this done. But we're down 20 at some point in this game. We're down 7 heading into the fourth quarter. And there's just something about this team that, you're nervous, of course, but this is the first time I've been able to say this as a Knicks fan. being down 20 feels like you're down 10. It doesn't feel like a lead that's insurmountable. So there was a point, I can't remember what the timestamp was in the fourth quarter, but there was a point where it tied at 82. It was like 82, 84, something like that. And that's when Brian said, nah, they got this. Like this has started to change. The Spurs don't have their legs under them. They looked exhausted. And it was just, another comeback, another Jalen Brunson, just barrage toward the end there. He ended up with 45 points and the Knicks scored 94 points. So he had almost half of all of the Knicks points in that game. It was also like old school 90s physical smash mouth basketball, which we don't see anymore. It's not the style of basketball that's played anymore. Basketball right now is very European, a lot of outside shooting and ISO ball. And that's not, we had a lot of physicality and both Dex and Brian said when we saw how this game was being played in the first quarter, they said, this might be an under 100 point game for each team, which is crazy because this is the league where teams are scoring 130, 140 points a game. But this ended up being the final score is 94-90. A couple of missed free throws down the stretch. You saw Victor Wembanyama miss one. Again, the feeling of we can overcome any lead, any deficit, that this is a team that is meant to do this and can find the way. You did absolutely feel that way. And it was fantastic to cover. Now, again, I don't have any words for what this has felt like, and I still haven't fully processed it. So the parade is tomorrow, and we'll see. I mean, it's just going to be pure euphoria. The NYPD is bracing for 5 million people to show up to this parade, which I don't think is a ridiculous estimate. 3.5 million people show up to the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and this is way bigger than that. I myself have friends who have flown in from Austin, Texas, Seattle, Washington, and San Francisco, California to come to this parade. So it's just going to be a day of joy and euphoria and New Yorkers celebrating. This has been the most unifying event that we have seen in New York in certainly my lifetime. I think if you asked people who are older, they would say in the last 50 years. And it sounds dark, but Deezus, who's a very famous commentator from New York, used to have a show with the kid Mero called Deezus and Mero. He tweeted this and then he said this on Pablo Torre's podcast, that this is like the reverse 9/11. And what that means is anyone who was alive and in New York at the time, the days after 9/11, the streets were empty in this very eerie way, in this way that I think we only have ever seen since during COVID. They were quiet. There was not a sound for a city that always has sound. People were terrified. And this was the absolute opposite of that. If you were out on Saturday night, you saw the streets filled with people just joyous and celebrating and sure, maybe climbing on some school buses. And, obviously none of us condone violence, don't set fire to cars, which is a very small percentage of what happened. I'm going to point everybody to Jon Stewart's monologue this past Monday's Daily Show, where he talks about the right-wing media's framing of New York as this hellscape. It wasn't that. It just was not that. I saw a kid doing pull-ups on a fire escape ladder. Like these are the kinds of things we saw, right? Maybe some people got a little too drunk, whatever. But I'm going to tell you, like, New York City is just we're a city like no other. We say it all the time, but we really are the greatest city in the world. There is no other place that I can think of where you would have had tens of thousands of people unified, celebrating on the streets Saturday night. And then because of our city services, because of the socialist hellscape that we live in, and we often complain about our city services, and we rightfully so, but we have to remember that these men and women are doing their best and they're working with the infrastructure and the funding that is in place with them. It's the only city that I can think of in America, definitely, where we could have had the level of celebration that we had with the number of people that we had in the density of our city, right? Manhattan is a small place, and obviously the celebrations happened throughout the 5 boroughs. But the next day on Sunday morning, the streets were clear. Everything was cleaned up. People were able to go to work with no problem. The buses were running on time. And that's just New York. We will see the state of the streets after potentially 5 million people come to this parade, though. And I will also say New York is not a place that the rest of the country roots for. Either you're from a red state and you think we're a communist hellhole, or you hate that we're ethnic and diverse and dense and we stand for everything that that you don't like. And then our teams don't confer themselves to a lot of sympathy or empathy or communal feeling outside of the city. This was the first time since 9/11 that I have seen people outside of New York and fans of other teams actively rooting for us. And I have friends who are Spurs fans who obviously were rooting for their team hard, but also were like, I'm happy for you. And I say this the first time since 9/11 because after 9/11, the Yankees were in the World Series playing the Arizona Diamondbacks, and there were signs from people who were Red Sox fans, who were fans of other teams saying, we're all New York fans right now because of what had happened to us and to our city. So this is obviously not because of a tragedy. This is because I think, one, this is one of the rare times when a New York team was the David and not the Goliath. We were not favored coming into this series. Victor Wembanyama is a generational talent known as the Alien. He is 7'5" and does things physically on the court that we've just never seen done before. Sometimes his arms are just places you don't expect arms to be. Jalen Brunson is an undersized point guard who was knocked for that for years and is now the NBA Finals MVP. But he's listed at 6'2", and frankly, I'd be surprised if he were more than 5'11" or 6 foot. But so in a lot of ways, we were underdogs coming into this, and that's not usually the case with a New York team. And then the other part of that is these guys are so genuinely likable. They are likable human beings. They're likable dudes. You've got this wonderful trolling chemistry between Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson, who have a podcast together. They're super charming. Their chemistry is crazy. They are also, and I don't say this lightly, and I include Kat in this and, and OG, this is a group of some of the most non-toxic men in a sports world that can often feature a lot of toxic men. When Roe v. Wade was overturned, Josh Hart tweeted, I'm so sorry to all the women out there. I'm so sorry. A bunch of these players have overtly come out against Trump. These aren't men who are afraid to cry. These aren't men who are afraid to be vulnerable, as we talked about with Kat talking about his mother. They're active fathers. They're good husbands. Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart are such wife guys. They're good dudes to root for. Yeah, a lot of people will say, and it's true that as the biggest media market, you also have a lot of bandwagon fans. That's fine. We accept everybody. This is probably the only time that I've ever been I don't care if you just became a fan. Come, welcome, join us. Let's all revel in this together. But no, so this is just a team that kind of brought everybody under our umbrella. And, I use the word unifying. We also use the word resilient because of how they came from behind for almost every single one of these games. That's, to me, the biggest metaphor for New York. We are a city that has the largest concentration of billionaires in a 2-block radius on Park Avenue of any 2-block radius in the country. But we are a city of working class people. We are a city of Jose Alvarado, as a kid, again, who grew up in the trenches, in the projects, who is now an NBA champion. And this win feels like a win for all of us. And it's not just because we finally did it. The way that we did it, the way that we were resilient, and the way that we came from behind, and the way that we showed out at every road arena. We took over Philadelphia. No, we're gonna be smiling about this for a very long time. And after Thursday's parade, I'm gonna take a month off drinking and just sleep. I just need some sleep.
Yeah, you had a long 2 months.
Yeah. Long 2 months for sure. I just had to say, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for my Knicks family. I'm so grateful for all the friends that I have that I've had my entire life who are Knicks fans. The thing about living in the city in which you grew up is that we've had part of our Knicks crew, from every stage of my life. I've got people who came out to watch with us from elementary school, middle school, junior high, high school, college, adulthood, work. New friends that I made just for this Knicks run. I love my Knicks family, and we're going to show out to this parade tomorrow. But I love this team, and I love New York, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. And I love you, Mom. Thank Thank you so much for tuning into Sportly. Tune in next week when we return to regular programming with our World Cup coverage and a brand new episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on your favorite podcast app or come tell us on Instagram. You'll find us at SportlyPod. Sportly is an Immigrantly Media production. This episode was produced by Paroma Chakravarti. Our executive producer is Savia Khan. Our sound designer and editor is Paroma Chakravarti. Our theme music was created by Simon Hutchinson. Other music by Epidemic Sound. Tune back in next week and every week after for more Sportly.